Good evening, everyone. As I'm sure you all know, our distinguished speaker today is Leni Robredo. Robredo is the 14th Vice President of the Philippines, serving from 2016 to 2022. During her term, she reinvented the office of the Vice President, transforming it from its traditional role of performing purely ceremonial functions to an advocacy-centered office. There, she launched the poverty alleviation program called Buhay, Uplifting Lives, energizing private sector partners and providing a space for them to help some of the poorest, farthest, and smallest parts of the country. Under Robredo's leadership, the Office of the Vice President also set the standard for swift and efficient disaster response, assisting affected communities from relief to rehabilitation. When COVID-19 hit the Philippines, Robredo led a multi-pronged response operation to address the complex problems brought by the pandemic. Robredo also took on the challenge of leading government efforts in addressing the country's massive problems in housing and illegal drugs.
Prior to her vice presidency, Robredo first entered the Philippines political scene in 2013 when she was elected member of the House of Representatives. In this position, Robredo pushed for legislation for a more transparent government. She was also a devoted advocate for equality, filing the Comprehensive Anti-Discrimination Bill. A lawyer by profession, Robredo has been working with the poor and marginalized communities for over 3 decades, both in the private sector and in government. Soon after her term as vice president, she set up Angat Pinas, a non-government organization, to continue the Angat Buhay program, which now focuses on education, health, disaster relief and response, and community engagement.
As a staunch advocate for women's empowerment, Robredo has instituted and supported various feminist initiatives, such as the Lakas ng Kababaihan ng Naga Federation, which provides training and livelihood opportunities for women, Angat Bayi, which empowers Filipino political leaders, and the Babae Nihan campaign, which calls for better education, health, and economic opportunities for adolescent girls. For her work on women's empowerment and gender equality, Robredo was awarded both the Honorary Outstanding Woman Award by the Thai government and the Most Influential Filipino Woman of the World Award by the Filipino Women's Network in 2016. In both private and public spheres, Robredo has served as an advocate for marginalized communities, uplifting other women to do the same. Today, Robredo continues to light the way for women leaders.
We encourage tonight's diverse group of students, faculty, staff, and community not only to listen with an open mind and heart, but also to reflect on our role in making the world more inclusive, more safe, more empowering, more equal, not only for women, but for all of us. It is our pleasure and honor to introduce to you the former Vice President of the Philippines, Leni Robredo.
It's on.
It is on, and game on, too.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe you could, if you'd like to just open with some comments. And then the structure of this is that we've solicited some questions from Harvard students, Wellesley students, I think others as well, and I've tried to focus those in where they have some commonalities, and we'll engage in a dialogue and then save some time for you all to raise some questions as well. So, but I think having some opening remarks from you would be wonderful.
First of all, thank you for the generous introduction by our Wellesley ladies. I think, James, this is the most number of Filipinos I'm with since I arrived in the U.S.
That's a good day, then.
It's a very welcome breather. For those of you who do not know, James was born in the Philippines. James was born in Olongapo, right?
Yeah, it's a long story.
It's a long story,
Hang around for the
but
reception, yeah.
that's the reason why he's half Filipino by heart. But I'm so privileged to have been given this honor to meet you this afternoon. Students from the Harvard College and from Wellesley College, and parents and friends of students who are here with us. This is my third week, I think. This is my third week here in Harvard, and I've been doing talks about twice a day. And most of my talks have a sprinkle of Filipinos in them. But this is the most number of Filipinos I'm with, so this is a very happy occasion, James.
Well, wonderful. I think, we titled this engagement, our conversation, Women in Leadership. And I think the opening remarks and introduction focused, and also those by Marky as well, focusing on the role of women in leadership and your role in that. And I think that's actually the most important place to begin, I believe, to open this up. And I think, it's quite fascinating to see how in Asia, there have actually, proportionally, there have been more women leaders than particularly in the US, and I would say arguably in other parts of the world. But if you could reflect a little bit on your experience of being a woman in a leadership position in the Philippines, and also in a situation where being a woman can inspire, but it could also be used against you, I think, in some of the critique and things like that. So if you had some opening comments just about reflecting on your position as well.
The Philippines is actually better performing compared to our Asian neighbors as far as closing the gender gap is concerned. If you look at the current statistics, I think the latest was July of 2022. We're 19th in among 146 countries. The Philippines is 19th. As far as closing the gender gap is concerned, we're at about 78%. And that's doing better than most. I think in the Southeast and the Pacific, we're next to New Zealand, and I think we're third. So we're better than most. But that's not a reason to celebrate, in the sense that there's still a lot to be desired. If you look at the breakdown, of the data says that only about 63% of our women are employed, are in the labor sector. Congress has only about 29% women. It was higher when I was there, a little higher. As far as women holding middle management and upper level positions are concerned in private positions, I'm quite surprised. We're only at 13%. That's low. We're performing better in many other indications except in education. So there's a lot to be desired. I was telling James earlier that before I came over, I was just at a fireside chat also. No fire also, just a chat. At the Kennedy School before the Southeast Asian Forum of the Business School and Kennedy School. And I was asked the same thing. How is it like to be a woman holding a leadership position in the Philippines? And I think my answer to that is the same as many other women, even those not holding leadership positions, in the sense that there is a feeling that we have to work double time so that we can have the same opportunities and the same the same treatment that our male counterparts have. Data shows that the difference in the income levels between male and female doing the same kind of work is about $2,000 per year. So meaning to say that the opportunities are not really the same. There's not level playing field. That became more stark when I became vice president. I was at the receiving end. Those who are based in the Philippines who are here know this for sure. That I was at the receiving end of not just disinformation, but as far as disinformation is concerned, I was the most vulnerable, because it was so easy to accuse me of a lot of things. Like, you wouldn't believe, James, what the kind of stories have been weaved about me. I have a succession of boyfriends. At the age of 57, I was pregnant for 3 years. I was married at the age of 15 to a communist leader. All those sorts of things. And if I was
travels.
if I was a male, I would not have gotten that kind of false information. And it was not just me. We have a senator. She just ended her term, Senator Laila de Lima, who was one of the more courageous ones in the Senate. She was very vocal against the bloody drug war that was happening in the last 6 years of the previous administration. She was a sitting member of the Senate, and because of her being vocal about human rights abuses and those types, there were a number of cases filed against her, trumped up charges. Not only that, there was an investigation conducted on her, and because she's a woman, there were alleged sex videos with her, which were obviously not fake, but would have been different if she were male. Maria Ressa, Maria Ressa has been doing a lot of efforts on the disinformation front, has also been at the receiving end of a lot. When I was vice president, I have been publicly subjected to misogynistic remarks at a very public event in Tacloban, city south of Manila. The president commented about my legs. I have 3 daughters, I don't have a son. Whenever any of my daughters would, be vocal about their stand on particular issues, they would receive threats of being raped, many other things. So it's the kind that is it's the kind of things that women are subjected to. So it's tough to be in a leadership role. Not only will you have to manage mindsets and cultural dictates, but you have to work extra hard to get the same kind of recognition as your male counterparts.
Well, we'll come back to the issue of disinformation, misinformation in just a minute. But I think in the face of what you've just described in terms of representation and overall percentages, I know you have. Look around the audience here, young women who are sitting here, young Philippine women who I'm hoping some are aspiring to go into some form of public service or perhaps even elected office or something like that. Given what you've learned in your time, would you have some kind of advice for how to negotiate that situation and to try to rise up and take a position and assume a leadership position in their own lives?
Yeah, I've said this already. I think I've said this twice in a similar forum. And this is an advice I want to give to all the young people here who aspire for public office later on in life, not just to the women, but also to the men. And this is a lesson I've learned from the journey I've been through. I never intended to be a public official. I was a lawyer working with the communities. I was only thrust into this world after I lost my husband to a plane crash. I had no preparation whatsoever except for my experience helping my husband navigate through his political life. But even if there was no deliberate preparation for this kind of life, the lesson really is whatever opportunity is given to you, no matter how small or how big it is, do your best. Because you will reach a stage in your life that will allow you to look back. And when you look back, you will realize that all the dots will connect. Meaning to say, in Philippine parlance, walang sayang. The Filipinos will understand this. All opportunities are stepping stones and preparation for the kind of life that you will lead, whether you join politics or not. When I lost my husband to a plane crash, I was subjected to so many difficulties, and I'm not even talking about the vice presidency yet. And people would ask me how I survived losing a husband, going into political life, being practically on my own. And I would tell them that, I think what prepared me was the difficulty I had to go through when I was a lawyer for the very poor. When I was working for fisher folks, there would be times when I had to spend nights, lying down inside boats because there were no houses that could take me in. I remember one particular instance when I was 6 months pregnant with my youngest daughter. And because there was no house who can take me in, the fishermen, we were helping fix the boats. If you can imagine all the fishing nets, they folded it one on top of the other. And it was so comfortable, James. It was so comfortable, except for the fact that there were a lot of mosquitoes. So whenever we spend days in farming communities, we would spend nights in, the older Filipinos would know this, in huts without walls, just roofs, but no walls. We would spend nights there again in Filipino parlance, off lang ang katapat. All the mosquito repellent lotions that we had to apply just to ward off mosquitoes. But the reason why I'm telling you this is that when all the difficulties started coming after I lost my husband, all of that made sense. Because whenever I'm subjected to ridicule because I'm a woman or harassment because of the positions I take, I always go back to the communities I've served. And I think that's the reason why I've never felt at any time in my life I felt being a victim. Because I felt like my difficulties are nothing compared to theirs. I'm still so thankful for the opportunities that came my way, opportunities that are not available to them. So it's the kind of dots that connected. If my lawyering was a very privileged one, meaning to say if my practice just made me wait for clients in air-conditioned offices, then I wouldn't have been immersed in the kind of difficulties that I've seen and the poverty that I've seen, having front row seats to everything. So when I lost my husband, became a politician, and then had a tumultuous 6 years as vice president, I didn't feel like I had to pity myself because all the difficulties I've been going through were really nothing compared to what I saw. So that's what I meant by the dots would connect later on. So whatever is given to you, nothing is too small. You have to do your best.
Wonderful. And what lies, I guess, underneath that? You mentioned, facing and responding and a kind of empathy to those less fortunate too. But what do you draw on to keep the courage that you have and the resolve in the face of those difficulties? It's a little more personal of a question, I know, but deep down inside, what keeps you with such a kind of an optimism about the future and possibilities?
Actually, my past experiences and the fact that I've learned how to go back to my why. When my husband was still alive, we had nightly exercise. My husband was a mayor for a long time in the city where we come from. And every night, I would drive my husband around the city. He would be my passenger, I would be the driver. And the purpose of that nightly road trip was to check, for my husband to check if our street lights were working. Because he felt that if there was one street light that was not working, or if there was garbage that was not picked up, it was a reflection of the kind of governance that he was performing. And during those nightly trips, one exercise that we did was to assess if we were still being true to the reason why we are there. And when I lost my husband, that has been my nightly exercise. But there's no one to share it with, so it's like of internalization of what's happening. So every time there's difficulty, it was not a nightly thing anymore, but every time there's difficulty, I ask myself, why am I here? So it has always been very clear to me that it was never my ambition to be a politician. But the reason why I am there because I was answering a call to duty. And there's a responsibility that I have to perform. It has always been my mantra that, again, whatever task is given to me, I give my all. And, that's always the level of assessment that I do. So however difficult it is, it's very clear to me that I'm here to fulfill a duty. So it's not like, I don't let my emotions get the better of me. There's been a lot of things I had to take, especially during the last 6 years. But always the bigger picture prevails.
So, and clearly, it has drawn a huge following, and you've inspired so many people, 15 million supporters, rallies with nearly 500,000 people, 500,000 people showing up, and clearly I can see the excitement even in the eyes of people here for you and the work that you've done. So maybe it would be interesting just to reflect a little bit for you. How do you plan to harness this energy that you have tapped into? Many women, particularly young people. What looking ahead? What can be done with that?
I'll just give a little context, James. Okay. Because going into the campaign, I felt that because of all the propaganda and the disinformation, if you look at the surveys from before, my approval rating was in the single digits. There were surveys of presidential contenders, and I would always be at number 6 or number 7. So if you will, backtrack a little, there was no way that I had any chance at making it. But again, a lot of things happened. The time that's given to us is not enough to discuss the journey. But I decided to run, and there were no expectations at all. But during the campaign, we saw a lot of things that we never thought would happen, and that is people actually coming out. And not just coming out, but people who are so invested, people so passionate. It was my 3rd elections, my 9th because of my husband. It was the first loss for me, but it was the most fun campaign of all. Because people, just went out of their way to contribute. It was the easiest elections of all, despite the environment that was prevailing. It was the first time. It was really phenomenal. Phenomenal in the sense that it's not just the crowds, but it's really people coming out. Even Filipinos who were not in the Philippines. People coming out, doing their own thing, not waiting for the campaign headquarters to dictate upon them what to do, but people doing all the initiatives. In fact, we had to set up a museum of hope. After that, we have a museum of hope now that showcases all the things that the volunteers did during the campaign, and I think that was unprecedented and worth building on. So during the elections, I finished 2nd with 28%. When I filed my certificate of candidacy October of 2021, I was only at 7%. But I finished at 28%. People were really, they were all in. I think it was worth building on the phenomenon that happened. So the elections was on a Monday. We had a Thanksgiving rally on a Friday. And the Thanksgiving rally was really to assure people that even if we lost the elections, it was not the end of our fight. We will continue fighting until our people get the kind of lives that they deserve. And I also announced during the Thanksgiving rally that we're putting up Angat Pinas Incorporated, which we dream would be the biggest volunteer network in the Philippines. So it's a continuation of the anti-poverty program that we have been doing at the Office of the Vice President. But what makes it more special now is we've tweaked the model a bit to make sure that it's not just anti-poverty program, but it's really a platform where all the people who helped during the campaign, and even those who did not help in the campaign, will have, a platform where they can continue immersing themselves in community work. I think it's what will keep people inspired and hopeful that all was not lost because of the election. So it's what is occupying our time now.
So I think people would be interested, I certainly am too, is that when you moved the Angat Buhay campaign into this new mode, what are some of your plans for that? What kind of role is it going to play going forward? And what sort of initiatives?
When we were doing Angat Buhay at the Office of the Vice President, it was purely anti-poverty program. And the purpose of that was in a sense different, because I knew I would be sidelined by the administration. And if you look at our constitution, there's really no mandate for the vice president except succession. So we did not want to waste 6 years doing just ceremonial work. So the purpose of that was to make the office more relevant, reinvent it, and make it a more advocacy-heavy office. So we were doing a lot of work on education, health, rural development, women empowerment, those likes. The kinds of program we were doing on education, for example, just to give everyone an idea, was we looked for places in the Philippines where dropout rates are high. We found those places, and we discovered that dropout rates were very high in some public high schools. So we went to those places, checked, assessed, made an assessment. What are the things that were causing the very high dropout rates? And most of the places, the reason for the high dropout rates was that children have to walk very, very far just to go to school. And when I say very, very far, it's an average of 3 to 4 hours walk each way, every day, just to go to school. So we built dormitories. We built dormitories inside public high schools where children can stay the entire week for free so that they won't have to walk far. And in those places where we built dormitories, the improvement have been dramatic. So we're building more now. We've finished about 6 or 8 when I was vice president. We're doing 3 now. But right now, we're doing it inside public universities. We're doing one, if you're familiar with Infanta Quezon, the Filipinos who are here. Infanta Quezon is in the northern part of Quezon. And those who will be staying in the dorm are members of the Agta and Dumagat tribes. And they are first generation in their families to reach college. So we're very excited about it. But to your point, how will this be a platform where, we can harness the passion and the energies of Filipinos? When I was vice president, the program was just connecting our partners with the communities that will benefit, because all of that are privately funded. But now, it's really creating spaces where you can participate. Like you can help build homes. You can, whatever. For example, we're building a village for victims of disasters, and the ones building the homes are the beneficiaries themselves, but the ones training them are students. So students of engineering are the ones who designed the houses. Students of architecture are the ones, students of architecture were the ones who designed the houses. Students of engineering were the ones equipping the beneficiaries in the building of houses. So students have been helping the residents paint the houses, do electrical work, do social preparation, do livelihood work. So it's creating spaces for those kinds of participation, with the hope that we will be able to develop a constituency that's very attached to the normal Filipino difficulties and problems that people face every day. We feel that it should not be directly political, in a sense. Having a lot of young people involved in our programs keep them grounded, and the feeling of being attached to something bigger than yourself, I think, is a very good way to hone leaders in the future.
Well, good. I hope that, in the future, the Harvard Philippine Forum has a service trip over the winter term that goes to the Philippines and does this kind of work. And I think that spirit we're also hoping, in the Asia Center, we have a disasters and refugees section that we're also working with people in the Philippines. So I'm really glad to hear that this will continue on. Hopefully we can join some forces there. So looking ahead, actually looking back and looking ahead at the same time, so you laid out some of the challenges that you faced and some of that inspiration. Are there things that the service that you've already done for the Philippines and the lessons that you've learned along the way that are informing the next stage of your journey, either in politics or in another sphere in the Philippines as well? What are some of the passions that you have for pursuing into the future? And perhaps related to that, if you might reflect a little bit on what you think about in terms of the path forward for the Philippines itself and your role in helping to build that next stage.
The first question, James. The one that's occupying my time now is really Angat Buhay. So I'm chairman of Angat Pinas Incorporated. Even now that I'm here, I do a lot of Zoom meetings, managing. There's a very able group that's managing Angat Buhay, but I'm still on top of it. So it's one half of the work that I'm doing, but the other half is the advocacy in the fight against disinformation, and it's the reason why I'm here. Actually, there's a lot of interest from the West. There's a lot of interest in the Philippines because of how disinformation has affected our democracy. How disinformation has brought about populist leaders. So there's a lot of interest in that. I've been invited by the Kennedy School to be a Hauser Fellow, specifically for that particular purpose. So I'm doing an intensive course now. I'm doing a lot of things, but the intensive course is about how disinformation has been threatening our democracy. And the one thing that makes it, I think, more challenging now is that we don't know how to deal with it yet. There's no playbook available. It's not like we have best practices already. The Philippines, to so many people, has become a petri dish. It's like we're ahead of the others in this game. So they're very interested in the lessons that we've learned, in the failures, in the failures in our responses. So that's a very challenging thing. Now, I've been getting a lot of invitations aside from Harvard to talk about it. I got an invitation to speak in Zurich for the same topic. I'm participating in an Obama Foundation thing, and disinformation is also the topic. I have an invitation in Oslo, same topic. So it's like, this is a joke, James. Don't take it very seriously, because I'm being trolled still for being in Harvard, and I want to tell them that thank you. It's because of you that I'm here.
Yeah.
But of course, but it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge in the way that it's not like we can tell people that this is how you fight it, because they don't know. On Friday, there's a launch of it's the latest in the series of researches that Jonathan Ong, who's a Filipino, he's a professor at UMass Amherst, but a Shorenstein Fellow of the Kennedy School. He's been doing a series of researches on disinformation in the Philippines. The latest in the series is on the 2022 elections and how disinformation shaped it. It will be launched this Friday. And I've seen the draft of the report, and there are a lot of recommendations there. But because there are no best practices yet, even the proposals for how you fight it, there's been a lot of debate also. Like, there's a group that's advocating fighting fire with fire. I'm not very sure about it. A lot of supporters are actually quite frustrated with me because I haven't filed cases yet, but I want to do it the right thing. It's the easiest to use your emotions because, when you're being trolled, you want to get back. So to get back, the easiest thing is to file a case just to scare the one that's trolling you. But I don't think that will contribute to the bigger picture. So I want to do it right. I've been working with a lot of, there's a big group in the Philippines already that's been doing a lot of work. There have been a lot of studies already that saying this is not effective. For example, a lot of groups in the Philippines are doing fact-checking now. I'm sure you're aware of that. There's a lot of fact-checking sites already in the Philippines. While it's important, all the data shows it's not enough because of how social media works. Social media works on algorithms, and the fact-checking that we've been doing all these years are confined to the echo chamber. But we have been unable to, to penetrate the fortresses that they have created. So there's a course in MIT that's more tech related. So the idea is to bring everyone to the table and, discuss and convince everyone that this is the fight that we should all be together in. So I think I'm being led to that in the sense that perhaps because I'm one of the most trolled, they think that I'm in a better position to discuss it. But there are more Filipinos who have done extensive work on this. Aside from Jonathan Ong, Maria Ressa has done extensive work on this information much earlier than we started. In fact, in 2016, she has been warning us already, and we did not take it as seriously as we should have. So we have done a lot of mistakes. For example, when I was started, when the trolling was starting, I was telling a lot of people around me, let's not dignify, they are not true, so it will go away. At the end of it all, what is true will. But that's not the case. That's a very naive way of looking at things because, it just made it worse. So we're learning. We're learning now, but I'm glad that there's a lot of interest in it already. The Kennedy School thinks it's a big thing. So I'm glad that we're getting a lot of support.
Yeah, I really hope, this is something definitely that the rest of the world can learn from. It's still a big issue. We've identified the illness, but haven't been able to come up with a cure to this problem. I'm mindful of the time and want to make sure to engage the audience here too, but I thought I would end with my comments, or at least your questions to you, with one final one, which is to say that we look out here at this audience, but I also know the Boston community has a very active Filipino community, and there are many students from the Philippines that are in different universities here. And I just wondered what your thoughts are for a role that this community abroad might play in terms of upholding democratic values and progressive politics in the Philippines. Is there something here that all of these, particularly young people here, might do in support of that in an effective way?
I think there's an initiative now to make sure that there's a system where young Filipinos would have a chance to feel more connected to the Philippines by learning more about history, culture, immersion, and in the regular Filipino life. The group you're saying was going to the Philippines. I think Miguel Marquez will be in that group. Myrish is part of the group that's organizing this efforts. I think is the most important thing to make sure that, especially young people, especially those who were born here, Filipinos who were born here or have been here for a long time, it would be very understandable for them to feel disconnected, to feel detached. And I think it's a good thing to have an opportunity to, find ways where they go back. And it's not just the physically going back, but finding ways to have an attachment to the Philippines, because it's step one. When you feel more attached, you become more passionate about helping the country. There's no one formula on how to help. Wherever your passions are, that's where you can find ways of being involved. I was telling you earlier about our education programs. I don't know if you know that there's an education crisis in the Philippines. The latest World Bank report says that learning poverty in the Philippines is 90%. We're the worst performing. Next to us is India and Indonesia, and they have population so much bigger than ours, but their learning poverty is 50%. Ours is 90%. So it just compounds to the entire difficulty. And as far as Angat Buhay now is concerned, we've set up community learning hubs doing tutorials in reading and math. It's one of those things you can become involved in. There's a lot of opportunities. Our responsibility is to make sure that those opportunities exist. But it's really going back to your roots, understanding. Not a lot of Filipinos know about history, even Filipinos in the Philippines. There's not a lot of effort that's been exerted to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes that we've gone through in the past. So we should catch up. And there's been a lot of interest from the young Filipinos everywhere I spoke. Here in the community, there's a lot of interest in, how can I help? So I think what Myrish and the group are doing is number one need. It's filling up that platform, putting up that platform where Filipinos can become connected again.
I mean, that's one role that I'm hoping that the Philippine lecture series can do as well, is to inform through understanding of history, but not just stopping there, yes, but also, basic things on arts and culture, yeah, and other events and things that we can all do. So let's, if it's okay with you now, then we'll turn it over to the audience. We don't have a large amount of time. I think we could probably go a few minutes past we started a few minutes late. And I believe somebody has microphones that if you could keep your question short, that will help for us to hear from more people. And if anybody wants to raise their hand, they can, or begin. I see two up right away, but I want to make sure I'm looking in this direction too. Okay. So why don't we,
Here.
First here, yeah.
Jerome.
Hello, I'm the first one. Thank you so much, VP Leni. Actually, just to let you know, on the Zoom call right now, on this talk, are children of overseas Filipino workers in Amman, Jordan, who have known in my work, and they're here in support of you, and this question is for them. I've also asked the same question to Maria Ressa when she was here at Harvard. So for many people, we have all looked up to you and your place and your life of public service. From your perspective, for you, who are sort of the heroes that you look up to? The bayani. Sino pong inyo pong mga bayani po?
Alam mo, mahirap pag ang tanong Pilipino kasi sasagot ka Pilipina din.
And if Harvard was teaching Tagalog here, we might actually be able to do an answer here.
That was what we were talking about earlier, that Tagalog is not being taught in Harvard when it should. But I'm going to depart a little from that. But to your point, you said that you're asking this in representation of all the children of OFWs. Because in the Philippines, we've been saying that our overseas Filipino workers are our heroes. But we have not been taking care of them enough. I discussed this with Jeromel already. Nag-usap na kami ni Jeromel na matagal. I've discussed this with Jeromel already. I feel that to show our reverence and our gratitude to the OFWs, we should prepare for, working abroad should not be the life, but it should be, it's just a process. It should not be the end goal of everything. So because that is the case, there are a lot of things that we can do to show our gratitude. Some of them short-term, some of them more long-term. I was telling Jeromel that there are a lot of opportunities where we can better the lives of our OFWs. Like, for example, I've talked about this a lot during the elections, and I've been trolled. We have a lot of Filipinos who are seafarers. A lot of the seafarers are, regular seafarers. Only a small percentage are officers. And before you become an officer, you have to undergo training. And, it's a paid training. And I've been saying, we've been allowing Filipinos to leave the country as seafarers. But we're not making sure that they're well employed. In the sense that if they want to go out, we should equip them. We should help them, qualify for officership. Because the conditions of employment is so different among officers and regular seafarers. So that's just an example. We have a lot of teachers, nurses who are going abroad and not performing the profession they've been trained to. For example, trained teachers in the Philippines go out of the country and become caregivers. They become caregivers because they're not equipped with the accreditation and the skills that's needed for them to perform their professions in the country, in the host country. So that's one of the things we can invest in. But also to make sure that working abroad is not by need, but because of choice. A lot of Filipinos leave the country. There's a lot of social cost involved, but they leave the country because they need to. It's very difficult to leave your families behind. But, if you think about not having the kind of employment that will send your children to school, you go abroad. I don't think it's wrong to work abroad, but it should be because of choice, and not because you have to. When I was a lawyer, I've been lawyering for families who were disrupted because they had to leave because of work. So we have to take care of them. I was telling Jeromel that it is my dream to put up migration centers in the provinces where not just OFWs but also their families can benefit from. The skills in financial management, so that when the family member decides to stop working abroad, they have something to go back to. But right now, there's none.
Good. We'll take a question over here. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Good evening, po. I'm Lance. I'm a senior at the Harvard College, and I'm actually writing a thesis about how to improve public-private partnerships in the Philippines. And I was wondering if you might be able to, comment a bit about like some of the common failures in public-private partnerships and where you think they might play a role in the future for the development.
I think Lance.
Yes.
I think Lance Angat Buhay is a very good case study, in the sense that we were able to demonstrate that for a private-public partnership to be more sustainable, there are a lot of responsibilities from both ends. Like in our case, it was very clear to us that our only capital was trust. So we had to work on that trust. The first year that I was elected into office, I made sure that we qualify for ISO certification to demonstrate that we were serious with the kind of work that we do. So we got our ISO certification 1 year into office. We've been reaccredited every year since that. I don't know if you've heard that we've been getting the highest COA audit reports. And it's something that we've worked very hard for to demonstrate that we're trustworthy. So meaning to say, private partners just don't come. You have to make their help count. And they will come when they feel that you are worthy of the investment that they're giving. That's one thing. The second one is that a lot of what's happening now are very short term. And I'm very proud to say that most of our programs at the Office of the Vice President have been sustained not just for the past 6 years, but until now. And the reason for that is that we're not a fundraising organization. What I'm telling you is that a lot of corporations, private organizations in the Philippines are so willing to help. But most of them, the kind of help that they want to give is money or resources. We don't allow that in Angat Buhay. When we enter into a partnership, we require our partners to become part of the program. We just don't receive resources or contributions. There are some instances where our partners would say, but we don't have the time for it. We want to help, but we don't have the time for it. So we do it tripartite way. Like, for example, there's a group of women in the Philippines. I don't know if you've heard of them. The group is Towns Women. Towns Women fundraised money to help me with a protest case that was filed against me in 2016. I was supposed to deposit 15 million pesos before the Supreme Court, but I was only able to raise 7.5. So the Supreme Court was still waiting for the other 7.5, and this group of women fundraised for me. But when they were giving me the money, I said I couldn't accept because as a public official, I was barred from receiving personal donations. So, but I suggested to them, at first I told them, can you just give the money back to the donors? And the townswomen were saying, that's impossible because you have a lot of very small donors like jeepney drivers who are giving 50 pesos. So how can we return the money? But they were able to raise 7.5 million. That was the time of the Marawi siege, if you've read about the Marawi siege. So I asked them, would you be willing to build houses out of the 7.5 million for the victims of the Marawi siege? So they said yes, but they don't have the capacity to do the groundwork in Marawi. So what we did was we partnered with Xavier University. Xavier University in Cagayan de Oro became our third partner. So we were the ones who did all the legwork, coordination, everything, but townswomen gave the money to Cagayan de Oro. But every time we go, we bring them with us because we feel that the help becomes sustainable if they feel that they are part of it and not just a donor of funds. So it's one of the things that's made our programs very sustainable. Usually, we benefit from that. For example, Rotary Club of Makati. They were the very first ever donor of our first dormitory. So they said, oh, we'll set aside 1 million pesos for dormitory. But we said, you can't give us the money, you have to go there with us. So when they went, they were so happy with what they saw, and they gave more. They gave more dormitories. So it's like, if they feel like they're part of the change that's happening, they become very committed to it. So I think it's the secret to the private-public partnership model that we've been exhibiting in Angat Buhay.
Great. Lance, looks like you have a chapter of your thesis there. Good. All right, let's see if we can squeeze in at least one more question, maybe two. The woman in the pink jacket, we have to have a pink supporter here too, at least to have the. You have a pink shirt on, sir, as well. Well, maybe we'll
Mine
get
is
you.
hot pink.
What's that? Oh, okay. Okay.
First of all, thank you for putting together the Angat Buhay, Angat Bahay, or Angat Pinas. You're really helping a lot of Filipinos, giving a lot of opportunities to Filipinos and people like us to contribute and be engaged. My question is, do you have any specific leadership training skills for Filipinos? Because me, coming here from the Philippines, it took me a long time to get to my position. I realized that at some point, after a very long time working here, I realized that my passion, my hard work, my integrity was not enough. And then I had to include other things. I had to learn strategy, influencing, getting buy-in from people. And I think that's really important if you're trying to influence people toward this information and all that stuff. So I feel like that is important for Filipinos to learn, actually anybody to learn. Because I feel that, you can do a lot of work, but if you want to spread it, you need that leadership skill.
Yes.
And it's not something, unfortunately, it's something that you learn along the way, but it's too late, It would be nice if it's fostered and, kids are educated on it very, very early.
Yeah. We've been doing a lot of leadership trainings. We're doing a series with young local officials. And the target is to train them to become effective, ethical public officials in the future. We're also doing a lot of leadership trainings among members of youth organizations. But now that you're telling me about your own experience, that's a very good way to expand. It's a very good way to expand, and it's been the trainings we've been doing have been benefiting a lot of Filipinos, but it's very limiting in the sense that we're just doing it through the organizations that they are members of, but we don't have anything that's open to the public. So thank you for the suggestion. We'll think of that very, very seriously.
Thank you.
So, okay, you want to squeeze? We'll let you squeeze one in, and then I want to end with a student
Yes.
question, okay? Thank you for being patient.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Ed Gumbok. I'm from Norwich, Connecticut. Thank you, Madam President, for sacrificing a well-deserved life of peace and contentment to lead the fight for the Philippines. Thank you for showing us in words and deeds that there is at least one living and breathing political leader who is honest, principled, smart, and effective. But to be brutally honest, the Philippines is now ruled once again by people who will do anything to gain and remain in power. This early, the Marcos Duterte government is already showing their predisposition for corruption and greed. And given their track record, it will just get worse. And so whenever I talk to family, friends, and the people I respect most back home, they believe that only one name can inspire, lead, and call on millions of Filipinos to effectively and lawfully fight the malignant spirits in Malacanang. Leni Robredo. The time for you, Madam Vice President, to lead us again. By that I mean leading lawful street protests, peaceful demonstrations, may become inevitable. It may be sooner or possibly later, but it will come. Some leaders have criteria, a red line that must be crossed perhaps, or an unforgivable criminal act for them to openly come out and say, enough is enough, this has got to change. In your case, Madam Vice President, what would those criteria or red line be?
It's a tough question.
That's a long question. I was trying
That's
to
a
keep
tough
short,
question.
but
Yeah. But I think the assurance is that I think my track record speaks for itself. I have not deliberately sought public office, but every time there was a need to step in, I did, despite the opposition from my own family. So that's one. The second is that I think I got the ire of the previous administration because I was not willing to. There were a lot of red lines. There was a lot of red lines that I was not willing to compromise to. One of that was the bloody war on drugs. The second was the incursions in the West Philippine Sea. So I knew for a fact that as vice president, people would want me to be supportive of the president. That's the Filipino psyche. That people will not look kindly on a vice president that opposes the president. But because of the red lines, I staked my cabinet position. A cabinet member should be the alter ego of the president, should not, should not say anything that's against what the president stands for. But I crossed that line because of the red flags that were that could not be the subject of compromise. So it's that. But having said that, I don't think that the entire fight for democracy should be dependent on one person alone. There are a lot of good public servants, but a lot of them do not have the courage to keep on fighting because the feeling that there is not much support. But what you have shown during the elections was that there is every reason for us to be brave because you are behind us. So I just hope that you continue supporting good public officials because it is where we derive our strength from. I was very shy before, James, believe it or not. I was very shy before, but when circumstances require, I shed off that shyness. And, during the campaign, I was so energized by the kind of passion that the supporters have shown. So if you keep on showing that support, you keep on pushing back, I am sure there are a lot of public officials who will be as brave as I have been.
Yeah, good. Wonderful. Thank you. I think a round of applause for that one would be really good. So I'd like to, like I said, to end with a student question in the spirit of this event as well. And then please, everybody, rather than departing, we have a reception prepared out for you in the concourse just outside of this room. So hang around, chat with each other, eat some food, but let's please have a last question here. And we'll keep it reasonably.
I'll try my best.
Okay. That's not a promise, is it?
So, Madam Vice President, thank you for speaking. I really enjoyed listening to you. My name's Jose. I'm a junior at Tufts University. So
I'll be seeing you on the deck.
You'll be seeing me in the tent. Yeah, I was the one emailing you. Yeah. So my question for you is that this year was your second election against Marcos. So we had two elections, two very different results. Mm-hmm. People like to attribute fake news a lot to what happened this year. Do you think that fake news really was the sole deciding factor? If not, what else do you think came at play?
It wasn't. But a lot of Filipinos, have been very frustrated. That despite the years of democracy in the Philippines, it's like their lives have not changed. If there were improvements, they were very incremental. So a lot of people, there was a simmering frustration. And fake news weaponized that. So it's like fake news was the vehicle. It was not the one which caused it, but it was the vehicle. It was also the vehicle why the populist leadership was able to flourish. We have seen over the past 6 years that accountability is not a big word anymore. As far as public officials are concerned, there's not much demand for transparency anymore. If you look at the budgets, there's a huge chunk of the budget for intelligence funds, and it's not audited. But there's not much pushback there because of disinformation and propaganda. So what's the difference between 2016 and 2022? In 2016, there was fake news already, but it was not this big yet. Traditional media was still the biggest source of news before. We all knew what happened in the last 6 years, the shutting down of ABS-CBN. It sent a chilling effect on traditional media. And there's been a lot of, if you look at, there's not much pushback because the narrative is that media is corrupt. They don't deserve our support because media is corrupt. It might not be 100% false, but you know, as far as traditional media is concerned, at least there's accountability. There's regulation. But as far as social media is concerned, there's none. A lot of people are able to spew a lot of falsehoods because of the anonymity. So the polarization has been great because of how social media works. Again, there's a lot of people who do not have access to the truth anymore. So even if there's a lot of fact-checking, they don't reach people who should have been reached by fact-checking. So 2022 was ripe for that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we should all be in this together because our democracy is at stake. It wouldn't help just adding to the polarization. I don't know if you've heard about my Radical Love campaign. Nobody believed me about Radical Love because they felt that it was better to fight fire with fire. But if society becomes more polarized, then no one is listening to anyone anymore. So we want to do things right. That's why we have been listening to a lot of experts in the field who will be able to guide us and navigate this fight. But we hope that you will be with us.
Great. That's a nice, optimistic ending to this, yeah.